All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Best Self Blueprint. So, anyone who tunes in regularly knows the mission of this podcast is to bring on people with the knowledge, insights, and experiences that'll help you move the dial towards becoming the best version of yourself, whatever that means to you. So, back for round two after many adventures and many hours in the gym, we've got Chase DiCaprio. What's going on, man?
Hey, Trev, thanks for having me back.
You bet. Yeah, like we were just talking about 30 seconds ago, I've been keeping up with, you've been taking a lot of big vacations, doing these grand adventures, whether it's playing guitar in front of a live crowd or shredding some slopes. What, in your opinion, is like, why is it so important for you to take these vacations, to go to these new places and do these new things?
Yeah, great question. For me, it's always just been about expanding perspective and getting out of my own head. So I think nowadays, especially with the news and COVID, and well, before with COVID, and with all the different things that are being drummed up in the mainstream media and just in media in general, you can get really caught up in what is happening on your Twitter feed or Instagram feed. And if you're on Instagram and Twitter and social media enough, it almost feels like it's actually happening to you and you are experiencing these events. But in reality, you're just watching TV and scrolling through feeds. And that's not to discount anyone actually going through those events who were there. But for the most part, if you're living in California like myself and watching what's going on in Europe, you're basically just watching TV at that point. So for me, I used to get caught up in all of that stuff. So I used to go on Twitter, go on Instagram, and see the world just kind of imploding and almost exploding even. And I realized that in my health and fitness journey, it was important for me to take 10-minute walks. So after I'd eat, I go take 10-minute walks. And on those 10-minute walks, I slowly started to realize that there is a world outside of your phone. There's a world outside of Twitter. And in those moments, like when the protests were happening in 2020, there was riots in the streets and there was the news coverage and there was Instagram photos. And I'd walk outside and it would just be quiet, serene, and fairly like a safe place. So in my head, it was basically just me saying that I needed to get out of the Instagram and Twitter feeds, and I start needing to just break out and get outside more, experience nature, get some sun, and just break out of the noise. And that's really what started sort of me going into these different adventures, was getting out of the social media grips and start just experiencing a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think you said it perfectly. There's a big, vast world outside of the little screen that is your phone or your laptop or your TV. And it's so easy to get borderline hypnotized into constantly checking in on all those things because, I mean, for better or for worse, negative or positive, they're exciting events. And so it's really easy in terms of almost shiny toy syndrome to keep getting pulled into the newest revelation of what's going on in the world, but you can't really make an impact or do anything unless you're taking care of yourself. I always go back to the oxygen mask on a plane analogy where they say, don't help the little old lady first, don't help the child first, get it on yourself first. Otherwise, you passed out on the ground isn't going to help anybody. And I think it's the same thing in terms of just overall energy in life. If you're always focused on what's going on, across the pond or what's going on in all these other people's lives, to the detriment of how well you're taking care of yourself, your mindset, your emotions, your body, you're really not going to be of much help to create a solution for all these problems that you keep involving yourself in.
Yeah, exactly. Once you're able to, fill your own glass before filling others, and same with the oxygen mask analogy. It's important you take care of yourself before you start helping others, because once you start really caring for yourself and in the mental and physical way, you're able to actually use those skills you build to like help others. And even in the gym, there's a few examples where lifting and getting stronger has actually helped me in real world situations that we can talk about. But it's like building those skill sets in the gym, in the mind, not only just impacts how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself, but also has the ability to impact others. So it's important you take care of yourself and then use those skills to assist others.
Yeah, so you said something very important that I know you and Tom probably both say a lot, which is it's about how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself, which I wanna get back to that once we transition into the health and fitness world. But real quick, while we're on the topic of travel, it might be hard to narrow this down to one or two things, but what have been the biggest lessons or takeaways from, all of your trips and just getting out and experiencing all these new adventures? The accumulation of all of those, what have been the biggest takeaways that you've now been able to implement going through your regular kind of daily life once you get back?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me was just experiencing and being with nature. Growing up in Los Angeles, in the city, it's easy to forget that just outside of this area, it's just the most beautiful landscapes and nature. And that's something I didn't really experience when I was growing up. So exploring outside of that, it's been incredibly important for me. I know there's a lot of places like that just outside the cityscapes, there's this beautiful nature just to experience. And for me, it was important to rediscover that. So again, coming back to the whole point of getting outside of social media, getting outside of the drama, just being with nature. In my opinion, like, humans are solar powered. Basically, humans connect with nature. As very much hippie as that sounds, I think it's very powerful to get your bare feet on the ground, to get the sun on your skin, breathe in fresh air, have the sun wake you up in the mornings through the trees at 6 a.m. with the birds chirping. Like, there's something so serene and peaceful about it that I just found so important to connect with, that whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed, or just, in general, overwhelmed with life, I know I need to start getting reconnected with nature, which means taking those walks when I'm in the city, or taking a trip to, the mountains outside of Los Angeles or somewhere even further. So that was the biggest lesson for me, is that if I'm feeling overwhelmed, get sun, get quiet, get some peace, and it helps just reset everything.
Yeah, that's something I feel like one of my favorite practices that I religiously do on a daily basis is it's called RMT, so reset meditation therapy. So even if it's 2 minutes, just when you're transitioning and you got out of a stressful meeting or a busy work day or a crazy workout, just taking 1 or 2 minutes to allow your mind to play catch up, because you're spending the whole day back on your heels reacting to everything. But also, like you just said, it gives you that ability to go back to simplicity. And I think that's something that people neglect themselves because of how crazy and busy the world projects itself onto us. It's easy for us to succumb to just feeling like that's the only way to live. But really, if you just shut the lights off and focus on breathing, just breathe for a minute, it changes everything. It changes, switches you back into parasympathetic, drops your cortisol, allows your brain to not keep getting pumped with stimulus. And it's a great reset. But I agree with what you're saying about, even if, like, I do that again on a pretty consistent basis, I'm borderline obsessive about it. But even still, once a year at least, I try to take a 2-week trip where I'm going away from who and what I know, and just getting into nature, doing something difficult, I think is important, physically difficult, emotionally difficult, to really just put everything back into its perspective and into its place. Now, I'll finish up by asking a very selfish question out of curiosity. What is one of the craziest adventures you had from, all of the trips you took and places you went? Something that really stands out?
So the one that really stands out to me was when I took a trip to Zion National Park with a few of my friends and my sister back in August of 2020. We hiked through the Narrows, which is probably one of the most picturesque, scenic hikes I've ever been on. It's gorgeous out there. Zion's probably the most beautiful places on the planet, and I'll say that with pride. So I recommend everyone just go check it out. In the winter, summer, it's a beautiful place. But we hiked in the Narrows, which is just this river path, pretty deep, 16 miles long total. We walked 4 miles in, and we came across somebody who actually broke his ankle. And in the Narrows, like, if you've ever been on it, it's a river. So you're walking on a riverbed full of rocks and boulders and cliffs, and it's a very technical hike. So if you're not like in shape, or you don't have the best coordination, it's going to be difficult for you. And knowing that, we found this guy who broke his ankle 4 miles in, the canyon was getting dark. We weren't sure if there was rain showers, and they said that this canyon sometimes floods. So, we all knew our little group that we were with, we had to help this guy out. So it was a, maybe 5-6 hour long trek to build these gurneys with backpacks and walking sticks. And there were cliffs with boulders, and we had to like carry him down. And that's when I really got to test out like my physical fitness, because at one point I was laying on my back and I had to push him over this boulder so someone could catch him underneath us. And that was me basically like, all right, I need to get my bench press position up, press him up above me so they can catch him below me. And it was one of those things where all my accumulation of working out, of practicing these lifts in the gym, actually came to fruition. So carrying the gurney, at the very end of it, it was like farmer carry. So I was just practicing my farmer carry grip, and I was getting my traps all worked out. So it was wild. We ended up getting him help, but it was just like a really difficult journey that took at least like, 10 or 12 of us to all switch off to get him to make sure he was okay. But it was a hell of a journey just to get him out of the canyon just unscathed. But
Wow.
it was a crazy trip.
And it really does. I mean, that's actually the perfect transition then into the health and fitness space, where you've had a really interesting journey to me, just with the level of commitment you've brought to your health and fitness and the variety of practices you've tried to make sure that you find something that's not only sustainable but enjoyable. And I think what you were just talking about is kind of the end game, where you can work out and have big muscles and, have the aesthetic, but when it comes to functionality and how you can apply that gym etiquette or gym practice to what's happening in your life, although not many people will come across an injured person 4 miles into a canyon, but
Right.
What has been your, I guess, 2 or 3 biggest revelations, or just strategies that you've implemented in the gym that have gotten you the most ROI?
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen the meme of like the bell curve with like the different like Wojak faces, but like at the very end of the bell curve, there's like the kind of simpleton character who just says like, to lose fat, eat less calories. And then in the beefy part of the bell curve, it's like, no, you need to track macros, you need to track micronutrients, you need to eat 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight, et cetera. Then on the other side of like the curve, there's the like genius section where it's just like, eat less calories to lose fat. And so through that entire meme, it's just basically like my fitness journey. I was told like, just like from the professionals, eat fat, eat less calories, lose fat. And I was like, that doesn't work. So I started tracking heavily on macros and nutrients and tracking everything I ate, steps, which was very helpful. But it allowed me to go to the conclusion of, at the end of it, if I wanted to reach my goal to lose fat, just eat less calories. But telling that to someone who's a newbie, they have to go through those cycles of tracking the macros, doing the steps, testing out the different diets. So I totally get how people go through that progression. But the few biggest things that I've learned just in terms of like quick tips is that just NEAT cardio, which is just like walking. I actually don't know the acronym. It's like
Non-exercise active time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
NEAT cardio. So just getting steps in throughout the day. That was super important for me. I actually did a cut where I was eating 1,300 calories a day, which wasn't sustainable, and I did not like it. But I got really lean, which was what was the goal, but it allowed me to realize that this wasn't the goal that I wanted to hit. But I didn't really do that much like HIIT cardio. I did mostly NEAT cardio. So I was walking 10 to 15,000 steps a day. And I sprinkled that in throughout, 30-minute sessions throughout the day. So do some work, go for a walk, do some work, go for a walk, do some work, go for a walk. I was lucky enough to be able to do that. So that was really helpful. Like I thought I had to sweat over a treadmill and slave to get this cardio in, but it was just really just doing some NEAT steps and walking. And then another thing was not demonizing carbs. So I thought carbs were always the enemy, and eating 300-400 grams of carbs a day was going to get you fat and whatnot. But it was actually sort of the opposite, depending on what your goal is with like carb cycling and what you're doing in the gym. So on days you want to work out harder and the muscles you want to build, have higher carb days. On days you're not working out as much or you don't want to prioritize certain muscles, have those lower carb days. But it was nice having that flexibility in there. So The two tips I would say is like work in neat cardio throughout the day and get some steps in. At least like if you're like me, who's at like 2 to 3,000 steps just being sedentary, try to at least push for 5,000, which is like maybe 2 10-minute walks a day. And then the second one is don't demonize carbs, especially when you're going to the gym. So if you want to build muscle, lose fat, obviously you can lower your caloric intake and go to 1,300 calories like I did, or you can do it the more sustainable way, which is slowly build your metabolism, build some muscle. And throughout the process of building the muscle, your metabolism will speed up and you're eating the same amount, but you're actually losing weight, which is where you want to be, which is, a longer process, but it's definitely worth it. And you won't be able to do that without building muscle, adding a certain amount of carbs. So that would be my two biggest tips.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me as a health professional, how simple the process really can be when you boil it down, which is watch your nutrition, make sure that you're not eating garbage food and that you're somewhat in a caloric deficit if you're looking to, it's basically a caloric deficit if you're looking to tone, caloric surplus if you're looking to bulk, maintenance if you're good where you're at and you just want to feel good, and then move your body. Now, obviously, the more high level you want to take that, then you need to start going a little deeper down the rabbit hole. And that's where it gets fun to me, frustrating to others. But at the end of the day, I think for most people listening to this, they're just wondering what they can do to get that little bit of an edge. And it's go hard on the basics. Just focus on the basic principles of health practices. And if you do it consistently, which is, I think, where a lot of people have the hardest time, is day in, day out, not wavering, you're going to see results. One thing I want to kind of bring back is that quote you were saying of how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. What has health and fitness done for you in that category? Because I feel like it's not only obviously when you have that physical transformation and you look in the mirror and you're like, hey, good looking, how you doing? That obviously goes a long way. But I feel like the other component of it is when you know the integrity of consistently showing up and doing the work, that has a monumental impact on how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. So if you could talk about the two sides of that, the physical representation, and then just that emotional side of following through on what you said you were going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my biggest reflections at the end of 2021, after going through the whole entire fitness transformation, I sat down with my phone and tweeted out a tweet, and it basically said that I wouldn't compromise momentum for anything, that your momentum is the most important thing you can protect, and protect it at all costs. And for me, that was a realization of going through the whole physical process of getting lean, building muscle, getting consistent in the gym. There were days and weeks where I'd go 2 to 3 weeks, I have a great cut, I look good, I'm finally feeling the fruits of my labor. And then I'll go to like a friend's birthday party, have some beers, go out to the bars after, get some more beers, and then have like drunk pizza after. And then within like a day, you lose those entire gains from the past week. And then you start off the process again where you have to go through another 2 or 3 weeks, you feel good, and then you start feeling good again, and then you loosen up a little bit. So the biggest thing for 2021 for me was protecting my momentum at all costs when it comes to physical and mental progression. So I just had a hard red line in the sand. So January 1st, I stopped drinking alcohol. I haven't drank alcohol since, and it's March 12th. So I feel really good about that. And I have great momentum going into my physical fitness and in my work life. And it's just because I made the statement of, I will not let anything affect my current momentum. And I can't stress how powerful that was for me, just because every time I do something well, I let my foot off the gas. And then I end up in the cycle of just trying to rebuild that self, rebuild. But once I really started just saying, I will not sacrifice my momentum for anything, that's when I started getting consistent in the gym. That's when I started enjoying being with myself more. I wasn't really mad at the decisions I was making. I'm able to do a podcast in the morning because I'm not hungover. It feels great. Like I feel good about making plans on Sunday mornings and Saturday mornings, knowing that I'm going to be clear headed. I'm going to be able to make it. I'm going to be able to do work. Like it feels it feels really good. And that comes from the fact that I wasn't able to compromise my physical momentum, and that leads into my mental momentum. So it's basically body speaking to the mind and vice versa. And it's just a great feedback loop. So don't sacrifice your momentum for anything, period.
Well, and I think that goes back to, I think it's Ed Milet who has this saying of every human or every person has their own thermostat, where you're set at a certain temperature, and there are 65 degrees out there are 95 degrees out there. And so when you start pushing that envelope, in my opinion, it's your ego that comes in and says, oh, no, that's not who we are, we're down here. And so you'll go out and party and have fun, and it'll bring you right back to that 65 degrees where you're comfortable, your ego can recognize who you are, and it feels safe and secure. And so it's when you make that decision and you're convicted in that decision, part of that process is understanding the discomfort that will come with shattering your ego in increasing that thermostat and that temperature. But it goes back to that very cheesy quote of, you can either endure the pain of the discipline or the pain of regret. And in my opinion, discipline, there's at least a fun aspect to it. Regret, there is nothing fun about that. It's just a sinking feeling. And so for anyone who's looking to level up and, raise the temperature on your own thermostat, just know going in that your ego is going to try to trip you up. There's going to be, bless your friends' hearts, I'm sure they're amazing people, but they're not on the journey you're on, so they don't respect the commitment level it takes. And so they may offer to take you out for drinks, or to go to a party, or to, do all these things that are going to sway you from it. And the number one word that you threw down was momentum. You need to protect your momentum with everything you've got, because it doesn't take a lot to kill it. And so I absolutely love that. Now, in terms of work life, your job absolutely fascinates me, because you get to be in front of so many power hitters, right? You just get to be in front of people who really make an impact on a world level. Since the last time we sat down, has there been anyone in front of you that really dropped a piece of knowledge, or just being in their presence was something where you had a takeaway that's made big leaps and bounds in your life?
It's interesting. So we've been doing the podcasts for Impact Theory more remotely. So we've been just kind of, there has been an audience obviously due to COVID and whatnot. And I haven't been in person for those shoots as much. So I haven't really gotten to sit in and really listen and sort of take in what they're saying as much. So in terms of just takeaways from specific Impact Theory guests, I don't have anything specific. I love the guests, I love the content, but there's just so many things that I'm focused on. It's hard to just kind of nail down exactly like what one person says. But someone, or the group that I've been really listening to recently, obviously, are the Mind Pump guys. So they're the health and fitness, number one health and fitness podcast, I think, in America right now. And their content is probably some of my favorite out there. It's very relatable, basically trying to break the health and fitness industry. And a lot of what I talk about is basically just my version of what they're saying. So it's their philosophies of building muscle to lose fat instead of just caloric deficits that come straight from them, and it worked for me. So that's just my way of interpreting it. But the Mind Pump guys are for sure the best information for health and fitness that I've come across for the average person. And they spit out gems left and right for, working out, for life. They're some of my favorite people too.
I've actually never heard of that, so I'm gonna have to look it up.
Yeah,
So
they're great.
I guess then my follow-up to that is, because this is something with the new facility that I'm at, I'm actually sitting in it right now. The thing I love most about it is everyone here, all the coaches, have very high standards for themselves, not just in work, but in their health and fitness journey and in life. And I feel like Impact Theory very much is like the definition of being around very intentional, very driven people. What has that done for you, being surrounded by people who are very intentional about continuing to push their limits of, what's possible for them, not just in work, but in life.
In the best way possible. It makes me feel very badly about myself. So like when that comes from is basically I'm surrounded by just awesome, amazing, incredible people. So it's just awesome being around the team, Tom, and the group of people we've built, and the people that Tom has brought into the ecosystem. They're all just incredible people with incredible mindsets, incredible work ethic. And at times, again, like it just makes me feel bad about myself. But then I obviously try to flip that into they're making me better. And I always feel like the dumbest person in the room, which again is another reason why I love being around them, is because they teach me so much. So I'm just very grateful to be around the team. They break my ego, they break my ways of thinking. So all the time I'm coming across decisions that I think would be better for X, Y, and Z. Here's the data that proves why. And I think I'll have every argument lined up. I go through every single variation of what they're going to throw back at me and have a response for that. And they're always somehow breaking it. And in the best way possible, it's like, I should have thought of that. I should have thought of it this way. So just rearranging my mental models for how to think about certain things has been very impactful. And that's been just a practice I've worked with Tom and Lisa over the years, and with the team, Will, and our director of operations, Andrew. They've been great at helping me breaking my current way of thinking. And it's just been awesome to be around, because it, helps me grow, and it helps me just understand the problems that the company is facing better and how I can best solve them without necessarily relying on other people. So it's a great thought experiment every day.
So my biggest relation to that is, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Now, my only caveat to that is in times of celebration, if there's nothing you're actually looking to get out of the circle other than relaxing, comfort, and just celebration,
Of course.
by all means, be the smartest person in the room. But in times of work, in times of growth, if you truly feel that you're the most accomplished person there and you're not there to teach those people, you need to start getting around higher quality people in that context. That was something that I kept relearning that lesson the hard way, because I'm very much I don't like leaving people behind. I don't like moving on from people who are loyal, great human beings, which you don't have to do that, but you need to set boundaries in terms of time allocation, in terms of what situations you want to be, communicating and connecting with certain people. And especially when it comes to work or to projects or to your personal growth, you have to be around those people, like you talked about, who may, in the best way possible, make you feel bad about yourself, make you question the way you think, the way you execute, the way that you move through your day. And so I think that's something that, if people listening don't understand what he means by in the best way possible makes me feel bad about myself, get around mentors, get around successful people in whatever area you're looking to grow into, and you'll start to realize what that means. So it's breaking you down, just like when you're working out, the lifting the weights is breaking down the muscle tissue so that it can build itself back up even stronger. And so I absolutely love hearing that from you, because that's been one of my life lessons on repeat over the last 3 years or so, is just making sure that I'm surrounding myself with people that fit my future more than people who fit, my past self and who I was.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a humbling experience, and for most people, when they feel badly about themselves, just kind of let it spiral into, I'm not good enough here, I'm not good enough at this. And that was certainly my story for a while. And it was, I didn't feel good enough. I didn't have the confidence. I had major imposter syndrome. So coming on podcasts like this, it's a way of me like breaking out of that. So it's like I don't feel like I'm necessarily a big expert in health and fitness or marketing or whatever, but I do offer valuable advice. I think it helped people. So that's just, again, I had that imposter syndrome feeling, not good enough, but knowing that, I still wanted to do it anyways, because I know that some information I have could help somebody else. And whether I feel good about myself or not in that situation, the keys that I have might be able to help unlock, something that you're dealing with. So that's exactly why I like doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. My feeling around imposter syndrome has very much shifted, especially in the last year or two, getting some of the opportunities I have. I felt that imposter syndrome pop up, and my response to it, as if it's someone telling me you're not good enough or you shouldn't be here, then my response to that feeling is, all right, then let's earn that spot now that we have the opportunity. So if you feel that you didn't deserve it, okay, then what can we do now that we have that chance to almost treat it like an audition to completely blow that imposter syndrome out of the water? And then the other piece to it too is then don't take it for the magnitude of the opportunity, take it for the magnitude of the learning experience that that opportunity provides, and go in more as just an educational process than kind of, I think when you feel like an imposter, it's when you're putting yourself up on a pedestal of some sort. And so when you take that pedestal away and you go back down to just, okay, this is a test, this is, a learning opportunity, it really levels the playing field instead of propping yourself up only to try to, trip yourself up right off that pedestal.
Yeah, and like there's an old dating adage, you're better looking than you think you are. So for me, it was I was surrounded by so many brilliant minds in terms of like marketing and whatnot. So to backtrack, I started my own side business this year, and part of why I sat on it for so long is because I didn't think I knew enough about it to have a sort of profession in it. And because of the imposter syndrome, I was surrounded by like guys like Tom and our team, where I just talk back and forth about certain analytics, metrics, marketing discussions, and it all seems so just natural and so casual because we all know about it. But I started realizing I knew a little bit more than I knew is when I started talking to other people who weren't in the same room as us, and started giving them advice. And everything I thought was so basic and conversational between myself, Tom, and team was like revelatory to these other outside companies. So it was like, geez, I'm not giving myself enough credit for all the sort of skills that I've learned, all the hours I've put in. It was very easy for this echo chamber to just make me realize that the casual conversations that we're having in house don't necessarily translate to other people. So I guarantee you there's someone listening to this who has that same exact scenario. There's something that they do that's so casual, so easy that they think everybody can do it. And as soon as they start talking to someone else who can't do it, it's revelatory. And I think finding that little niche for that person, if they're struggling with money or confidence, like leveraging that, I think could be extremely helpful in that quest for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was telling you this before we started. It's very evident to me that you've been strategically playing a quality game of chess that is life, where you're intentional about the pieces you're moving and where you're putting them in place and setting yourself up in the right way across the board in terms of areas of life. What's your advice to someone who feels that the life they're living is tolerable, but it's not quite making them happy and fulfilled? It's just at that point where it's not uncomfortable enough for them to try to push forward, but it's not lighting them up.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm kind of in that scenario right now. So I actually want to break out of where I'm at now. So I'm living in LA. I kind of want to move to New York soon. And that all stems from the fact of I'm getting very comfortable in LA. I grew up in LA. I know that my opportunity for growth is going to be exponential if I go into a new city, a new territory with no friends, no family to support. And to me, that's very, very scary. So, I'm 27 now, went to college for a few years in Arizona, but decided to come back in LA and work. But I'm slowly realizing that I am getting too comfortable where I'm at now. And in order to sort of break out of that, I want to do something radically different, which is making a move across the country. So I'm still going through that. But my thought process in doing that was I don't know if anyone here is from like a small town, but I'm sure if you're from a small town, you probably run into the same person from like high school at the same bar. And, maybe 10 years later, they're still at the same bar, maybe 15 years later, the same person. So they're going through those same motions, same job, same sort of, day-to-day life. And if they're okay with that, that's great. But I know for me, I want, great things for my life. I want a big family. I want, the financial security. I eventually want to get like a homestead in like Utah or something and like raise cows and stuff like that. So that's like my goal. And in order to get to that goal, I want to start really breaking out and doing something different, which the first thing I could think of is going to a new city, new environment, and really seeing how I can really survive on my own. And that's probably the best advice I would give is just, do something crazily different out of the blue, something that you're uncomfortable with. And then you'll learn a lot about yourself in it. You'll learn that you're not good enough. You learn that, you don't know what you're doing, but in that, and you can look back to yourself and say that the worst spot I can be in is back to where I am now. It's easy to move forward.
Yeah, this reminds me of I was teaching a class about the Tao Te Ching, not even a class about it. I was reciting certain parts of it as part of the class. And one of the topics in the Tao Te Ching is about fear. And it's the man or woman who's able to move past the illusion of fearful thoughts is truly unlimited. And I think what you're talking about is exactly the cage that prevents people from leveling up to the true level they want to get to in life, which is they think about a big move or they think about a big life decision, and the illusionary fearful thoughts prevent them from it. Now, I want people to realize I'm very intentional about the words I'm using, illusionary fearful thoughts, because there is no reason to actually be scared. You will be okay. 99.9% of these decisions, you will come out okay. Your finances may take a hit. You may go through some crazy experience or a lot of chaos or challenge. But if you remove the fear and take it as what it is, an adventure and a lesson to be learned, you'll be a lot more pulled towards making these big moves and these big decisions, because you aren't so worried about, staying in your shell and staying in what's comfortable. So I think that's amazing. And, it sounds like you've got a plan. You have thought this through. I think that's the other piece of the puzzle is once you realize what you want, before that fear creeps in, cut it off by just logically thinking, if I were to do this, what would it actually take to do this? And allow your logic mind that opportunity to lay it out before your fear automatically says, no, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to the Tao Te Ching, there's a section in there where it talks about uh, softness and stiffness, and it talks about the flower that's dead is brittle and it breaks, while the flower that is flourishing and alive is nimble and able to move with the breeze and the wind, and it's flourishing. And seeing those little iterations and just reflecting it and reflecting in your life, it's like, the dead flower is stiff, it's frail, it's frail, it doesn't really have any life in it. And in order to bring life back to something, you need more limber, more smooth, more, going with the flow with life. So to me, that was a powerful lesson, is just that, like, if I'm stuck in this one position and I feel like afraid to move, then I know I'm already dead in the water if I want to get so binary. But if I want to, start living, flourishing, feeling more alive, I need to start being more limber and accepting and like, okay, these are the transitory periods where I'm not going to be as sort of stiff. I'm just going to let it go with the flow, try new things. It's going to be scary, but I'd rather much be the flower breezing in the wind than the crusty, broken rose.
Yeah, and I think this whole topic of conversation ties back to the very beginning, where it's like, if you know you want this big change, or you can feel that it's necessary just on like a soul level, but everything feels like chaos around you, tie in that reset that we were talking about, tie in that 10-minute walk or that RMT, and give yourself that opportunity to clear up the murky waters so that you're able to go in with clear thoughts, with clear intentions. That way you're not, double dipping a chaotic situation with a chaotic mindset, because that never ends up working out well. Give yourself that time and that space once the initial card is on the table to then lay out the blueprint on how to get to the destination.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything I've done up this year has been moving towards that point of making a big move, big change. So it's all calculated. You got to see what your goal is, work backwards from that goal. And part of that was, New York is a lot more expensive than people think. So I knew I had to find a way to earn more. And that came back to, all right, how do I earn more? What am I good at? What do I know I'm good at? And I wrote it all down, wrote down my skill set. All right, how can the skill set help X, Y, and Z? And just broke it down from there. And anyone in that situation, I think like if you have a goal, that's something that's financial at least, like see if you can break down your skill set. How can it help other people in your scenarios? And try to get out of the whole imposter syndrome mindset, because again, you're a lot better than you think you are.
A lot of wisdom in the last 40 whatever minutes of this talk. So I want to wrap it up with one question.
Sure.
I did not look at your answer to this question last time, so I gotta see if they're the same or different. But for you right now in your life, what's the next step in you becoming your best self?
For me, it is about controlling my vices. So one of the vices I had was alcohol. So getting that under control. Another vice that I have is sugar. So I have a massive sweet tooth. So getting that under control. So I want to be fully in control of all of my vices. One tip that I learned as a man, at least, is that the best thing you can do to have a successful life as a guy is just stay the hell out of trouble. So nothing good happens after midnight is what my dad always told me. So just, have fun, stay out of trouble, and control those vices. So now I'm underway with just controlling all the different vices that I have at hand. And I think if, all men were able to sort of find what vices are driving them to do the things that they do, if they're able to control it a little bit better, like that's half the battle right there. You'll become, I think in my head, I'll become like Superman if I control my vices. So that's just kind of the goal I have. And that's sort of the uphill battle that I'm facing. But yeah, I want to get that fully under control, fully under managed. And I really think I can take leaps and bounds if I just get all my vices just totally under control. But again, it's a mental thing. It's a brain thing. So it's like the dopamine hits you get from sugar, from alcohol. It's a whole mental thing. And there's, I don't want to say withdrawals, but there's certain things that are going to be tough mentally. So a fun challenge, but it's also just brutal. So looking forward to really getting control of my vices.
That's huge, man. Now I will say, going back to how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself, Superman would be a great feeling to have about yourself when you're by yourself. And that's something I've always said. I love Marvel, I love DC. And I always say, I want to be a superhero, like no bullshit. I want to be a superhero. I want to be able to lift with the big boys, run with the skinny boys, stretch with the yogis, like have that physicality of a Captain America type. And so selfishly, I very much love that statement. But no, and I think that's something everyone listening can take away too, is even if you don't want to go at all of your vices, pick one and get very intentional about trying to limit it or completely expel it. So yeah, we will wrap it up there. Thank you for coming on a second time, man. That was between talking about, because to me, I'm about to take a road trip in a couple weeks. So I loved hearing about the travel. Hopefully I don't find any injured people in need of getting taken out of a dire situation. But
if you do, you'll be able to help them for sure. So there you
go. I'm hoping, if it involves running, I think I'm safe at this point. But
there you go.
Yeah, man, from travel to fitness to just how to level up in life, I'm continued to be inspired by the things that you share and the things that you inspire other people to do, myself included. So thank you for coming on and sharing all of that.
Appreciate it, Trevor. Thank you for having me on. I'm happy to do this, and I appreciate you seeing me as a source of information to help others. Happy to do it.
You bet. And for everyone listening, as always, especially if you make it to this point, thank you so much. If you liked the video, the YouTube spiel, give it a like. If you know anyone who just feels stuck, feels that they need to level up, but just don't quite know how, or anything else that we covered in this, go ahead and share it with them. That's why we do this, is to get this information out to people. And if you have questions, comments, agreements, disagreements, that's why there's a comments section. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will catch you next time.